Okay, picture this. Your pupils dilate, you're suddenly short of breath, sweat starts collecting on your palms, your heart is just racing, and you absolutely cannot eat a single bite of food. We've all been there, right? You feel terrified, but you're not actually in any real danger. You just saw your crush. Welcome to our explainer on the psychological narrative of attraction. Today, we're taking a documentary-style deep dive into the chaotic, honestly kind of scary, and completely overwhelming feelings of a new crush. We're going to look at the exact biological and cognitive mechanics that literally hijack your system when you fall for someone. To make sense of all this madness, we've broken it down into a 4-phase anatomy. We'll cover the biological crisis, limerent obsession, the social mirror effect, and finally, grounding the brain. Because I promise you, there is a totally rational, scientific explanation for your romantic anxiety, and we've got a therapeutic toolkit to help you out.
Okay, let's dive right into this with Phase 1, the body's biological crisis.
So to your autonomic nervous system, seeing a literal predator in the wild and seeing that cute barista at the local coffee shop, they look almost identical. Both events trigger your sympathetic nervous system to initiate a massive stress response. And the reason is, from an evolutionary standpoint, mate selection is a high-stakes, dangerous game. The biological and social costs of failure are severe, so your brain treats the initial pursuit of a mate with the exact same intensity as a survival threat. It's wild, but your body is mobilizing to keep you alive.
Here is exactly what's happening under the hood. First, your SAM axis activates, flooding your system with adrenaline and norepinephrine. That's why your heart races and your palms get all sweaty. Then your HPA axis kicks in and your cortisol, the primary stress hormone, spikes dramatically. I really want you to hear this loud and clear. Your nervousness isn't a personal failing. It is a highly efficient physiological crisis response designed to make you hyper alert so you don't mess up a crucial evolutionary opportunity.
So your body is in full-blown crisis mode. But what on earth is happening in your head? Welcome to Phase 2, the mind's limerent obsession.
Back in 1979, psychologist Dorothy Tenove coined a term for what we so often mistake for early love. She called it limerence. Limerence isn't just a crush, guys. It's an involuntary, deeply obsessive state of attachment. It's essentially a neurochemical event masquerading as deep love. You become entirely emotionally dependent on whether or not this other person, the limerent object, reciprocates your feelings. You idealize them, putting them on this flawless pedestal, all while your own anxiety just skyrockets.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how consuming it is. At the absolute heights of limerence, individuals report spending 85 to 100% of their waking hours experiencing intrusive thoughts about their crush. Think about that staggering amount of cognitive bandwidth being completely hijacked. You're at work, you're in the shower, you're trying to talk to friends, but your brain is involuntarily tethered to analyzing every single detail of your romantic interest.
Time for a quick relatability check-in here. Why does a single unanswered text from them feel like the actual end of the world? Well, it all comes down to uncertainty and what psychologists call breadcrumbing, getting just enough intermittent attention to keep you hooked. When they take hours to reply, your brain panics. When they finally text back just a simple smiley face, you feel euphoric. That uncertainty is literally gasoline poured onto the fire of infatuation.
Because what you are experiencing here is a literal addiction loop. The uncertainty acts as intermittent reinforcement, which, by the way, is the exact same mechanism behind gambling addictions and slot machines. Your brain is reacting to a reward prediction error. Since you don't know when that text is coming, the dopamine surge when it finally arrives is massive. And the crash when they pull away, completely devastating. In fact, neuroimaging shows that this early-stage romantic obsession activates the exact same brain regions as cocaine use.
A perfect neurochemical storm is brewing. Your dopamine is sky-high, driving intense craving and motivation. Your norepinephrine is elevated, creating this hypervigilance so you remember every single word they said to you. But crucially, your serotonin drops significantly. Research shows serotonin levels in limerent individuals plummet to levels virtually identical to those seen in patients with obsessive-compulsive disorder. That right there is why you literally cannot stop the mental loops.
Now, combine this neurochemical storm with actual social interaction, and we hit Phase 3, the social mirror effect.
You become utterly convinced that everyone, and especially your crush, is analyzing your every awkward move. This is known in psychology as the spotlight effect. It's a cognitive bias, an egocentric mental shortcut, where we assume that because we are hyper-aware of our own nervousness, or, that tiny coffee stain on our shirt,
everyone else must be laser focused on it too.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the hard data behind the paranoia. In a famous year 2000 study at Cornell University, researchers had students walk into a room wearing a deeply embarrassing Barry Manilow t-shirt. The wearers estimated that at least 50% of the room noticed their embarrassing shirt. The actual number? Only 25%. We consistently double the amount of attention we think we're getting. Everyone else is just too busy worrying about their own imaginary spotlight to notice yours.
And this ties right into a related bias called the illusion of transparency. You might feel like your racing heart and your sweaty palms are being projected onto a giant movie screen for your crush to see. But the comforting truth is that your internal emotional state is largely invisible to the outside world. People aren't mind readers. You look a whole lot calmer on the outside than the biological crisis happening on the inside.
So how do we stop feeling completely crazy? That brings us to our final phase, grounding the love-struck brain.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual toolkit. When that anxiety hits, rely on evidence-based CBT strategies. Use the 5-4-3-2-1 sensory countdown technique to immediately pull your brain out of its obsessive loop and anchor back into your physical body. Then apply the SPOT framework. First, stop and recognize the bias. Tell yourself, okay, my brain is overestimating this. Second, perspective shift. Remind yourself others are focused on their own lives. Third, observe. Look around. Gather real evidence. Are they actually staring? And fourth, test. Challenge your assumptions by doing something slightly imperfect and realizing the world absolutely doesn't end.
Remember, you also have time on your side. Limerence is biologically unsustainable. It has a natural lifespan of anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. As the wild uncertainty of the early crush fades into the safety of a real relationship, your neurochemistry actually settles. As this fantastic insight from Harvard Medical School notes, cortisol and serotonin levels normalize. The stress response turns off, and true, healthy love becomes a buffer against the very stress it originally caused.
So the crucial point is this: you have the power to ground your reality and move from that crazy-making infatuation to stable, healthy bonding. When you feel that panic of a crush, use mindfulness to anchor your nervous system back to the present moment. Recognize when you're caught in a slot machine dopamine loop of texting, and actively choose to focus your energy on stable, mutual connections rather than chasing the unpredictable highs of breadcrumbing. You are in control, not your evolutionary stress hormones.
To wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. We've seen how your brain manufactures this intense stress, obsession, and dopamine craving just to ensure you don't miss out on a mate. So, in those early, agonizing days of a crush, who are you really falling for? Are you falling for the actual, flawed human being standing in front of you, or are you just deeply addicted to your own neurochemistry? Keep that in mind the next time your heart skips a beat. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.